Hello, and welcome to With the Flow, a June Cup podcast. I'm Madison Haggerty, host of each episode. I'm a fellow menstruator learning how to break the cycle of misinformation. From fellow June users to experts, influencers, and friends, we're finding the answers to questions that help everyone be their best self even when they're bleeding. On today's episode, we're speaking with sustainability influencer Brittany Westphier. Find her on Instagram at ConsciouslyEco. Brittany's here to talk about just what it means to make the sustainable switch to June.
Brittany, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me.
Would you please tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do with Consciously Eco as a sustainability influencer, and kind of just what prompted that journey for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I've always been passionate about sustainability, all aspects, especially eco-friendly swaps and goods, things like that make easy switches for everyday life. At the beginning of this year, I was unfortunately furloughed from my position due to COVID, and I finally was able to get my blog up and started, focusing on eco-friendly and conscious lifestyles. So I was finally able to kind of gear towards that and kind of send out different blogs about various topics in the eco-friendly world.
At some point in your sustainability journey, you came across the June Cup, thankfully. I'm a user myself, absolutely love it. So a lot of menstruating individuals may often be considering making the switch to more sustainable options, but they might be kind of skeptical. I know I was. So were you a first-time cup user with June? And what factors did you consider before making the switch?
Sure, yeah. I used a few other cups back in the day, a few years ago. I really wasn't a fan of those cups. Either they were entirely too big, I was maybe a little unsure of the size, or just the silicone was just entirely too hard and just kind of flustered me a bit. So when I actually came across the June Cup, I had read a ton of really amazing comments about it, about how it's a very soft silicone, so it's actually a lot easier to be able to do different folds. So as soon as I kind of read into those and saw such great feedback, I really wanted to give it a try. And luckily they were actually doing a, like COVID incentive, $6 for a cup. And I immediately was on board. I told my friends about it. They were on board. So we kind of bought up a bunch of them, but, yeah, we were very excited to hear about this cup and how everybody can kind of get into using the cup for a minimal price.
Totally. Yeah, no, that's awesome. I also heard about it from a friend, and here I am now and loving what I do and love spreading the message about inclusivity and, you know, taking away the stigma of menstruation for a lot of people. So yeah, it's super great. So I know you mentioned that you and a few friends had heard about it, but where did you first learn about the June Cup, or how did you first hear about it?
Yeah. So it was actually through the sustainable community on Instagram and Facebook.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. Kind of going back to a little bit more of your sustainability efforts, did you have a specific time or place when you realized when and how much waste is created with traditional disposable period products?
Yeah, so I actually kind of thought a few years ago just about how much waste it produces, just on my own, just, you know, kind of shower thoughts. And at the beginning of this year, that's when I really was like, I just need to make a change. And also kind of advise other people in the community who might want to make a change, how easy it is to make that change. So I actually wrote a few blogs about, you know, a person who has a menstrual cycle on average uses about 240 tampons each year, or roughly about 9,600 in their lifetime.
Oh my gosh.
So I kind of did the research and looked into it. I'm like, that's insane, the amount. And
yeah,
just in the US alone, over 12 billion pads and 7 million tampons are put into landfills every year too. So when I kind of started looking into those numbers and really seeing just the amount of plastic pollution behind that, it was definitely when I was like, I need to make a switch in my own life and then help some other people who might be wanting to do the same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's crazy. I did not know the specifics of those numbers. And think about how many people menstruate every single year. And every year there's more that end up menstruating. And so the more people that we could get, you know, switching over to these more sustainable options, like the June Cup can last up to 10 years. So that's doing amazing things for how much is going to eventually end up in our landfills. So everybody that I talk to that has thought about it, who's considering it, I tell them that it's so worth it with, you know, it's a little bit of an adjustment, but I feel like that's kind of anything more sustainable, or most things that are more sustainable sometimes do take a little bit of adjusting because we're just so used to this high waste, throw it away, replace kind of environment that we live in nowadays. So would you say that waste is the biggest environmental impact to consider when you're somebody who menstruates, or are there other factors that we may not think about?
Sure. Yeah, I think that is one of the biggest factors. You don't really think about how much waste you end up using because it is, just a week or a few days out of the month. You might, be busy and just, think, oh, well, my period started. I'm just going to grab a tampon. Right. I'm just going to grab this. Yeah. It's kind of more like we've grown up to be more like not to say mindless, but we're just not thinking about it. Mm-hmm. And so the amount of waste that kind of gathers from that, and people just not thinking about it, definitely can just, it's a big hazard in our world now, especially with the climate crisis kind of slowly but surely coming through. Mm-hmm. So I think that's just a really big thing for people who menstruate, is thinking about that waste and how maybe we can reduce it in any way.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you have any suggestions for listeners wishing to expand sustainable efforts in their life without feeling like it's too big of a task? Because I have, before made small efforts here, and sometimes I feel like I get a little burnout and I feel like I don't know where to go next. Is this possible to do in all aspects of my life? Oh, it just feels like too big of a thing. So do you have any suggestions for someone who's maybe starting their journey to become more sustainable and how they can do that and not feel overwhelmed?
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of how I said earlier, just taking one step at a time. I think the goal is to not overwhelm yourself with trying to change everything at once. You just make those small steps that will guarantee you to kind of stay within that habit. And I also think that, the cup might be a really big step for some people, but a lot of us are working from home right now. So being able to kind of test the waters, use it and kind of get used to it. And then again, small steps. So it's over time, you'll become an expert at it.
It's a marathon, not a sprint, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's wonderful advice to definitely test out at home right now. I've been at home for, thought it was going to be a week, and we're all sitting here on, I don't even know what month it is.
Yeah, who knows?
I know. What day is it? I don't even know. It's a great time to pick up something new and just give it a try. And if it helps the earth at the same time, even better.
Exactly.
Do you have anything else that you'd like to share with listeners about anything with having a more sustainable period, more sustainable life?
Yeah, I think the only thing that I would say is that it could seem very overwhelming at first to kind of give this new object a try. But what I personally did was I actually went to the community. I went and looked on YouTube just about, kind of the first time using a menstrual cup and kind of what to expect and just kind of preparing yourself. It's definitely different than a tampon or a pad that you're just gonna, be able to quickly pull out. So I would just say, just kind of do the research, kind of see, if you are looking to make this switch, just kind of prepare yourself. It's not hard at all. Just give it a try. Might freak you out first, but it will be fine. You will do very well through it.
Wonderful. I love it. Great advice. Well, Brittany, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. And it was so nice speaking with you.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I love the June Cup. Again, I have given a recommendation to all my friends and they love it. So
good. I'm so glad. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
To follow along on her sustainable journey, find Brittany at Consciously Eco on Instagram or email consciouslyeco@gmail.com for tips, recipes, easy low-waste swaps, and more. Finally, here's this episode's Break the Cycle tip brought to you by the minds behind the June Cup. Instead of subscribing to a monthly period box, end the single-use cycle by making your very own reusable monthly preparedness plan. We all experience vastly different pre, during, and post-period symptoms, and we all have special, quirky ways to stay feeling our best. I've admittedly considered subscribing to a monthly period box to provide cozy, comforting goodness when that time of the month comes along, but one way to break the cycle of waste, accompanied by convenient subscription services, is to create your own reusable alternative. Save money and reduce waste by swapping those single-use, non-recyclable face masks for a soothing, homemade concoction of your own, or support your local sustainable beauty makers and find something new and responsibly produced. Instead of spending tons on organic tampons and pads to use as a backup with your cup, try your hand at sewing your own reusable cloth pads and liners. Not only will they be completely tailored to your body, but you can save tons of money typically spent on single-use alternatives. Rather than a monthly candle that burns out eventually, try creating your own natural potpourri with your favorite calming essential oil of choice. Regardless of what kind of swaps you make, the goal here is to break the cycle of single use. Think about your preferred items in your picture-perfect period box and make your own creative alternatives that will save your wallet and the earth. Thanks so much for listening, learning, and going with the flow.